Welcome to the All Access Podcast from the experts at Tevis. Each episode, we'll talk about technology topics, trends, or solutions that manufacturers need to know in today's rapidly evolving times. Sit back, enjoy the discussion, and let us know what you think.
Hello, my friends, and welcome again to the All Access Podcast. I am your host, Michael Thiessen, and we are happy that you're listening in. You know what? Every single time when we get on the air and we're doing these kind of segments, we're always super excited because the people that come on this particular podcast are really the reason of why you are joining us and why you're listening us. And today is going to be no different. But instead of looking at mold and dye and looking at that industry, we're going to pivot today a little bit. And we're looking at the other big industry that we have in Michigan, or should I say in the world, that is really engulfing a lot of the manufacturing that is out there. And the industry that I'm talking about and that we're going to referencing today and doing a little bit of a deeper dive into it is the aerospace industry. And we have done a little bit before looking at aerospace industry over the many different segments that we've done. But I think today is going to be an interesting conversation with one of our dear friends that we've had on actually before on about a year or so ago. And we're going to ask him some questions on how the industry is really doing, especially here in Michigan, looking at our surrounding states there as well. And so this is going to be an interesting conversation. I think you're going to love what we have in store there for you. The person that we're talking to is Tony Vernaci. He is from the AIAM Association, or it's otherwise the Aerospace Industry Association of Michigan. And he really is one of those pioneers in Michigan that is really passionate about this industry and is trying to push this forward here in Michigan, and really is turning a lot of our business leaders' heads that they should be looking towards this particular industry. So we are excited to have Tony on, especially because there's so much buzz about the industry. So first and foremost, Tony, we'd love to have you back on again. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. It's always, anytime you and I bump into each other any place, it's always a great conversation and truly an honor and a privilege to be here on the podcast with you on a topic that I love talking about.
You know what? You and I are very passionate about this industry because we really are recognizing the potential and the power and the future that this particular industry brings to the manufacturing industry, I think in the entire U.S., but focusing on Michigan here.
Of course. Yeah, it is. And like we've talked about before, this is not something new. I mean, the aerospace industry has been, a main part of our economy since World War II.
Yeah.
And, when the war was over and, the B-24 bomber production ended, the industry didn't stop there. It continued to grow. But obviously, automotive has been the dominant industry here in our state for 100 years. So it just kind of flourished in the shadows of automotive, but it didn't go anywhere. Companies are still making big investments here in the state for the industry. So it's a big opportunity for the state because of the disruption going on in automotive right now.
Yeah.
All of the uncertainty and what is happening with electric. It's a difficult situation for some companies because they've made investments for electric and the demand doesn't seem to be following like people had hoped. But the good thing is the aerospace industry is not going away. There's technology changes there, but not like what we see going on in automotive. So it's a
Right.
great opportunity for companies in the state.
Absolutely. And you mentioned already, the automotive industry is a little bit in a slump right now with the changeover for electric vehicle and not quite sure which direction they're going to be going. Also, of course, foreign factors are playing into the roles there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, companies are looking at potentially diversifying. We have seen with our own eyes that there are quite a few companies that before were just automotive, mold, die, those kind of guys. But what you always said really still sticks in my head, and you always said it does not matter if you're automotive or whatever. You have the same machines, you have the same capabilities and know-how and experience. All what you need to do is apply it for a different genre. And have you seen this kind of trend happening over the last year? I know we've talked about a year ago, and where you see some companies switch over. How did you see that over this past year? Did more and more companies come up to you and say, "Hey, listen, Tony, we need to diversify. We need to do other things. Can you help us get us into the aerospace sector?"
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without question, we just continue to get companies that come to us and, they maybe have a little bit of aerospace or not any, and they want to grow and expand into the industry and diversify, which is a smart move. We do that with our own personal investments, right? And so that is a very smart move. But what we have recognized is companies sometimes have the perception that if they get their quality certification in the industry, it's called AS 9100, that they're good to go. That's good to have, but that's far from everything you need to be in the industry. So we have recognized that as a need, and through our foundation, the AIAM Foundation, we're working on developing a supplier development program specifically to help companies understand what it takes to be a supplier in the industry. And then, they have to evaluate if that's a road they want to go down or not. If they do want to go down that path, then providing them with the information that they need, what they need to do to be successful in the industry, because it is more than a quality certification. Yeah. While that's important, there's a whole lot more to it.
There's a lot of documentation, or there's a change of mindset for a lot of these manufacturers that they have to do in order to work with the aero or the space environment. Also, the defense side is also a whole different in addition to this. But I've seen companies that have done the research, they've done the changeover, and yes, there's a cost associated with all of this, but they're looking at this and saying, you know what, the future is at stake for many of these companies. And they're saying, you know what, there's thousands of parts that need to be produced. And if I go and in my mind back to the AeroOne conference that you guys have hosted, which is absolutely phenomenal. And any of the listeners that are out there, if you have not looked into the AeroOne, you guys got to look into it. But if I go back to that particular moment again, there were a lot of large OEMs, the Boeings, the Airbus people, the Liebherr that were there, that are saying, listen, we need suppliers. Mm-hmm. And because they recognize that there are more and more programs coming and they need manufacturers. And that's awesome.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is, for the first time in decades, it's not demand, it's supply is the challenge. The demand's there. The backlog for Boeing right now is around 8,600 aircraft. The backlog for Airbus is probably the mid 6,000 to 7,000 area. And to put that in perspective, Airbus on a pre-pandemic year, their production is about 800 aircraft, and that's the same for Boeing. So you look at that and you'd say, that's not months of a backlog, that's years of a backlog. Mm-hmm. Some of the models a customer airline will put down their deposit, and they'll say thank you very much, and you can schedule your delivery in 6 years. That's when we'll have your aircraft ready. So supply and talent, is the Achilles heel, the challenge for, and that's not specific to aerospace. That's everybody's challenge right now. But this is demand like the industry has never seen. It's unprecedented. It's not a flash in the pan. It's going to be here for decades. Especially when you look at the aftermarket. Aircraft is built.
Oh, yes.
It stays in service for 30 to 40 years. So, the aftermarket side is huge for this industry.
Oh, and we attend the MRO Americas conference. It is absolutely mind-boggling when we go to these conferences how huge the MRO is, the machine repair and overhaul sector. And there's such a buzz about this. It's phenomenal. The other thing that I wanted to point out, too, which also, for whatever reason, I'm going back in my memory, and I remember, don't ask me what I ate yesterday for lunch, but when there's things that are important to our industry and to the things that matter most to us, I remember those. And one of the things that one of the speakers mentioned, that one of the attractiveness of dealing with the aerospace industries, especially the OEM suppliers, is the pay schedule of how they're getting paid when all of this. And it seems to be that they're very, very interested in making sure that the suppliers are taken care of and getting paid in a decent amount of time. And I think that could be some of the attractiveness, too, for some of these companies that are currently stuck in a very long time cycle with the automotive suppliers to potentially say, you know what, maybe I'll look into that aerospace unit and see what I can do there. Do you see the same thing?
Well, it's not across the board, but there certainly are areas of that's absolutely true. If you're doing work with the Department of Defense, their payment terms are 30 days. And if they know that you're a small business, they can pay you in 15 days. So, which is unheard of in any industry right now. As far as commercial aircraft, it's a little bit split. You heard, Joe Markeski from Airbus speak about they're paying attention to this, and their payment terms are definitely evolving and improving significantly because they see this as important. Boeing's got a lot of things going on right now. That's all you got to do is turn on the news. But one of their challenges is their payment terms. It's going to break suppliers if they don't change something. Kevin Michaels, who's part of our organization, I've heard him speak with Boeing sitting in the audience saying, you have to change this. So I think Boeing will get to it. They've got a lot going on, new CEO. There's a change in leadership there. Yeah, but the industry is definitely evolving with that, and Airbus seems to be one of the first large commercial aircraft companies that gets it and is doing something about it.
You were mentioning just something now with this entire Boeing debacle that has been going on for the entire year now almost. How are they digging out? What kind of changes are they seeing, and what would that mean for the manufacturers down the road? I know we have been battling strikes and all that kind of stuff over the last year. What kind of signs are we seeing? Is there a positive swing and digging ourselves? Is Boeing digging themselves out of it, or what do you see?
Well, it's a pretty deep hole, and I think it's too soon to say. But there's a lot of optimism, with their new CEO. Clearly, the union, the customers, they all see, this could be a breath of fresh air that they need. I mean, it's a culture shift. You go back to, the 07, 08 meltdown when the automotive companies were in trouble. And a guy we all know, Alan Mulally, came in from Boeing to Ford Motor Company. He changed the culture. And Ford, their evolution out of the cycle was probably far better than some of the others. So it's a culture shift. They've got a lot to work on. But the demand is there. I mean, if there's any, to me, if there's any shining star out of any of this, if they can get things together, the demand's there. They're not dealing with an industry that's tanking.
Right.
The demand's there. The suppliers want to work for them. They got to stabilize their contract and get the workforce, situation taken care of. They clearly recognize the quality issues, the concerns that have been had. Unfortunately, sometimes you hear things in the news and it says, a wheel fell off a Boeing aircraft. That's not necessarily a Boeing issue. That's a maintenance issue.
Correct.
They're not saying, oh, that's an aircraft that's been in service for 10 years. So, but unfortunately, these things attach themselves to Boeing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Boeing has a lot of good airplanes. They have been decades in the industry and are really one of the leaders over here in the U.S. as one of the main, I should say, OEM in the aerospace industry, and have really shaped the aerospace industry over here in the U.S.
Absolutely, and it's not just commercial. I mean, Boeing has got a lot going on in the defense area, space. So I mean, Boeing it's a wonderful company. They've got themselves in a situation. It's going to take them some time to dig out, but I think it will. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. Some other analysts might have different views on it, but I think they will. It's just going to take time.
They have a lot of smart individuals in there and a lot of talented individuals that I have no doubt that they're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
I just came back from a 2-week trip in California. And of course, California, there's a lot of aerospace work in there. There's a lot of aerospace production. And almost every shop that I walked in that had aerospace, they were full to the brim with work and forecasts that it's not anything that they've ever seen before. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this. Do you see this here in Michigan too, with a lot of the aerospace companies that are here that they're extremely busy?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it. Because I mean, what starts at Boeing and Airbus and Lockheed Martin with the F-35 program, that flows down. I mean, Michigan is the supply base. We are the engineering, tooling, supply base for the industry. Mm-hmm. And so that all flows down, and there's no question about it. The companies, you can just look around. I mean, here in Auburn Hills, Visioneering, just put on 100 or 150,000 square foot addition to the already, massive building they have here in Auburn Hills. I mean, so the growth is absolutely there. There's, things that affected or, Boeing's issues. It just delays, they need to get the production rates up on programs like 737,
right.
And a lot of companies are waiting for that to happen. It's not that production isn't there. It's just the volumes are not matching where the forecast is because they got to work through these challenges.
I mean, you mentioned Visioneering, a very awesome company to deal with. We're dealing with them as well, and they are of course they're always looking at the future, and that's exactly why they've expanded and doing more and more. Legacy, of course, is another big client where they're dealing a lot in the aerospace industry there as well. But even some of the smaller individuals, I just read just recently an article, especially about the how in Michigan some of these smaller companies are switching over to the aerospace industry. One of them is Barron Industries, that they've really expanded and are looking into the future of aerospace as well as defense and doing more and more of that type of work.
Yeah. I mean, Barron Industries is obviously, one of our members and one of our friends, and we know the family, we know that company very well, and they've got so much going on. Great company to work for. They treat their employees right, and they're getting ready to take on an expansion themselves. And it's a very, niche market that they're in, and they were at the conference. And then, they had very extended conversations with Airbus and Lockheed Martin at the conference. So, then there's examples like that all over the state, but that's one right here in Oakland County.
I mean, I've talked to Bruce Barron many a times in the previous AeroOne conference, as well as this last conference that we met up, and he also spoke during the conference as well. And he really took a leap of faith and saying, you know what, this is the industry that we want to be more active, and that's why we're expanding and doubling. And I think kudos to him. I think it's the right decision, and it's the right time to do these kind of things.
Yeah, no, he's clearly reading the tea leaves the way a lot of other people see it, and they're taking smart moves. You know, the industry, like I said, it's not a demand issue; it's a supply issue, and so he's seeing this as the timing's everything. So they're making investment and putting things in place. So when the demand, is ramping up, because the demand's there, it just can't ramp up right now, and so they're going to be ready, and so they're very smart with what they're doing.
Yeah. And the aerospace, I mentioned that before, is very dear to my heart. I mean, when I started off in the industry, and many people don't know this, I actually started off in the aerospace sector. I went to college, went to Ryerson. At that time, it was Polytechnical Institute in Toronto because that's where I lived. And went to Ryerson, went to my first year of aerospace engineering because that's what I wanted to do. And at that time, that was back in, oh gosh, I'm dating myself now. Back in the early 2000s, 1990, and end of 1990, McDonnell Douglas up in Canada went downhill for them at that point, and then the aerospace industry almost came to a halt at that point.
Yeah,
this was right at the time in late 1990s that I moved with my family to Grand Rapids, and I continued on with my studies. Unfortunately, at that time, aerospace was not a big topic in the schools and all of those kind of things. So I switched then from my aerospace major to the automotive sector, and then went down this. So that's why the aerospace is really near and dear to my heart, because this is an area that I wanted to be active in. I wanted to be in the aerospace, and of course, as a young kid, who doesn't want to fly?
that's right.
And when I saw Richard DeVos at your AeroOne conference, and seeing what he has put together with that Aerospace Academy in the Grand Rapids area, and seeing the proteges that came out of this that spoke at the conference as well, these young individuals that at an early age, they're saying, I want to be associated with the aerospace industry. And if I think back, these kids are what, 15 years old?
Yeah, high school
Age, that they're saying, you know what, I want to be active in the aerospace industry, if that means flying, if this means working on an aircraft or whatever. But putting this together and seeing how they started off in this very small building and now having this beautiful, future-oriented building available, it's just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's a man. His personal passion. I mean, he's a pilot. Fixed wing and rotorcraft. Dick's a pilot, but he is invested in that community, and he's investing in the talent. The old saying of "put your money where your mouth is." He's doing it, and his company and family are behind it all the way. And it is one of the jewels in the state, that the West Michigan Aviation Academy. If you haven't seen it, you should. We're a supporter of theirs because we believe in what they're doing, and we're even taking it a step earlier. We have a competition that's actually wrapping up this Saturday. We call it the Michigan Girls Future Flight Challenge. So this is our third year. It's a competition, a month-long competition for 4th through 8th grade girls. Mm-hmm. And they've been working on a project for the last month. Their presentations are this Saturday. They're given a problem. Here's an issue: forest fires, detecting trash in the ocean, whatever it might be. And they have to come up with what might be a flight solution to address the issue. And so they're presenting to a panel of judges. I get to be privileged of doing that this Saturday. But we're going upstream even of high school to say, let's help these students understand what the industry is about and what a career might look like, so we can start helping them through their thought process and their educational journey.
I think that is needed. Just taking the correlation between the automotive sector and all of this. I mean, if I look back in my days when I was in high school, we had shop class, we had all of those things. If you look now in high schools, they're no longer there. Those shop classes, I mean, there's a few high schools here and there that have reinvested back into this again, that have got a machine and all that kind of stuff, which I commend them for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the situation that we are in the manufacturing industry that we're running into is we can't find enough expertise and young individuals that want to work in that environment. And what Dick DeVos is doing with the aerospace industry and what you're doing with the young girls in the aerospace industry is kind of preparing them for and see and letting them see the passion and the what the future could bring if they are active in that particular environment. I commend you for doing this, as well as to Dick DeVos of kind of fueling or providing fuel for the future.
You have to see that talent pipeline. Everybody wants to stand, at the university door on graduation day and hand out applications and think they're going to, those days are gone, so you have to get upstream. There are, we talk about the West Michigan Aviation Academy. Also, in Macomb County, there's Stevenson High School, and we had a young lady, she was on the student panel at the conference this year from Stevenson. And they do have a skilled trades advanced manufacturing program that is stellar. And companies are hiring kids out of that high school to come to work for them. So there's examples of it. There's not enough of it. But those are two great examples on opposite sides of the state. But you even look, you go into the Upper Peninsula. Michigan Tech, we all downstate, we all know of Michigan Tech, but we don't know about Michigan Tech. And what a tremendous university that is. And they, in the fall of 2025, are begin offering an aerospace major because they've had a aerospace minor for years, but now they're expanding to offer an aerospace major because they recognize this industry is the direction where we need to be training our talent.
Many people don't realize that the UP, the other side of Michigan, as many people would say, they're very active when it comes to aerospace. There's a lot of aerospace companies that are up there.
Oh, don't get me going. I mean, I am blown away every time I go up there. The talent, the technology, and the can-do attitude with people and the companies in the UP. It's not a place for everybody. You've got to like certain climates to live there. But the people that live there, they live there because that's where they want to raise their family. That's where they want to run their business, and they figure it out. And it's either Brad King and Orbian, building thrusters or satellites, or Brad McPhee and Rapid River, doing some amazing composite work, or our friend Goody at Northern Wings. That's he's managing the supply chain for a lot of aerospace programs. It's all over the UP, and it's all over our state, and that's what we get excited about.
Yeah, I know a lot of good friends that have folded up their tent over here in southern Michigan and have decided to move up to the UP.
Yeah,
and it's a absolutely stunning country, part of the country. If any of you listeners, you've never been up to the UP, go there. Not during black fly season, but go there during the normal season. It is spectacular.
Yeah, my son and my father-in-law went to the Green Bay Packer Detroit Lion game last Sunday, and I told my son, I said, you ought to. Going there or coming home, you should come back to the UP. He came back to the UP and he says, "Oh my gosh, Dad, I can see why you love that place." And it's
yes,
yeah, it's not just pretty landscape. The people there and the companies there are truly incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pivot quickly. Next year, March 12th, 2025 is an important day. This is where you have the AIAM Technology Expo.
Yeah. Tell
me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, like at the conference this year, Boeing came, Airbus came, and they were very explicit. They wanted us to set up a forum for them to meet one-on-one with companies and talk to suppliers. This event that we're going to have, it's going to be at Macomb Community College at their Sports and Expo Center, same place where MDEX takes place every year. But this is really to try to put a focus on the technology of the industry. A lot of times purchasing, supply chain, they want to meet companies, but this is we are bringing together the engineering community to meet some of the best technology that the industry has to offer here in the state. And so we'll have space for up to 50 exhibitors. We'll have one or two speakers during the day, but it's a full day. It's an expo, and it's something that we feel is important because, companies like those up in the UP are so technology based. And that's what drives the industry, that we thought it was important to set aside an event, build it around technology. And so there have been opportunities for companies to have a demo area if they want to do have demonstrations of their technology, or they want to have a traditional, pipe and drape booth and have companies come through and meet them.
Right. I know you and I have to talk about that, and we're going to do that another time because, we over here at Tebbis, we're very big believers when it comes to the aerospace and doing something like this. So we want to be a part of that, and we'll talk about a little bit later about this.
Yeah.
The other thing that really was interesting to me, you had a speaker at the AeroOne also on there, a very well-known individual, at least in Michigan he was, and he still is. But he went from a governmental job to a job that looks at the cybersecurity. And that's, of course, something that is very important in our area right now because we've heard of so many companies getting hacked and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on in the industry. If you don't know who I'm talking about, Rick Snyder, the former governor of Michigan, is very active when it comes to that particular area of expertise. What do you see a lot of in the cybersecurity area with the aerospace community, and how do those things work together?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. And Rick, he's a self-proclaimed, he will tell you he's a nerd. He loves this kind of stuff, but kudos to him, after his public life, stepped into this because it is critical. It's if we're living, running our businesses thinking, oh, we're too small, we don't have to worry about anybody trying to hack us, you're being naive. And it's there. And Rick will tell you the smaller companies are probably the bigger targets because these hackers are very sophisticated and they know those companies are probably the most vulnerable. But it is important for the industry because the DoD, it's called the CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. There is a DoD requirement coming that they keep monkeying with the date a little bit, but 2025, 26, where that requirement is going to be hard clad and it's going to be absolute. It's not a matter of, oh, I'm not doing business with the DoD. Well, guess what? If you're supplying parts to Eaton, who is doing business with the DoD, Eaton's suppliers, the suppliers, it goes right down the line. So nobody's going to be immune to this. And then you can say, okay, I won't get into the DoD world. Again, you're being naive because your company is vulnerable. And this is so important that we had a webinar last December. Rick was on the panel. We did it. We broadcast it live from Ann Arbor, and we had a company on the panel that had just gone through a cyber breach. And I'm telling you, it would make the hair stand on your arms. It's just like you're sleeping in your house and you realize somebody has broken in and they're in the house. And the way you describe this, even just telling you right now makes my hair stand up. What couple I have, but it is unbelievable. And it's like, why would I not want to protect my business, my customers, my investment? So whether you're doing DoD work or not, you have to pay attention to this.
Yeah, we tried from the All Access podcast. We tried to reach out to Rick Snyder and his team because we wanted to give them a platform too to reach out to more and more companies over here, because we also believe that this is a very, very serious topic
Mm-hmm.
that companies and small companies need to look into. And if you think you're immune to it, think again,
Yeah.
because this can happen to you today.
Yeah. I mean, they got a great company. Sensei is the business.
Yes.
And they, he put together a great team. And they're truly subject matter experts, and they want to come in and just help you. They'll do an assessment.
Right.
You might say, oh yeah, there's a catch. It's a free assessment. They're going to tell me I'm in deep trouble. You need us. They might,
Yeah.
but it's a score, and it at least gives you an idea. And there's no charge. I mean, let them come in. What have you got to lose? Other than let them come in and assess your business. You decide for yourself if you think that they're just trying to sell you something. I know him well enough to tell you he's not. He really wants what's best for you.
Yeah. Well, maybe if Rick listens to this podcast or whatever, come on over. We'll make an episode out of this.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. Companies that want to switch over from the automotive, how can they get in contact with you and ask questions? Or what are my next steps? What do I need to do if I'm interested in the aerospace industry?
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to talk to them, because, we're here to help the business community in Michigan. I mean, we obviously are a member-based organization. We tell companies we're not trying, right now our database, we show there's almost 1,000 companies in the state of Michigan that are impacting the industry in various levels. We're not trying to get 1,000 members. That's not our target. We want companies to become part of this. I want it to be good for them, but they need to be good for the organization. And what I mean by that is, what you bring to the party. Tebas is a great example. That is something that was of value to the industry, and we truly want you to be part of that. But the greatest thing you can do, and you don't have to be a member, come to one of the events. Come to AeroOne. We've got a luncheon next week at Array of Engineers in Grand Rapids. Come to that. We welcome members and non-members to these events, and just listen in. Have some conversations, meet some people, ask some questions. You have to really understand what you're signing up for if you're going to get in the industry, and it's it's not a walk in the park. It's not easy, but the rewards are great. And like I said before, it's going to last and serve your families of your employees for decades. So
absolutely,
just come to an event, if nothing.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're going to see you at the luncheon at the engineers in Grand Rapids there.
Yep.
So we'll be there as well. Now, I always have this issue, Tony, and I'll be totally honest here with you. Every single time when we talk to individuals like you on this podcast, and I want to look into the future and I take my crystal ball out, I always run out of batteries. So therefore, I always have to ask my dear friends that are joining me on these podcasts, if you look in your crystal ball that you have, and hopefully the batteries are working, what do you see for 2025 and beyond for aerospace manufacturing here in Michigan? What do you see?
Yeah, I see, really one of the biggest things, like we talked before, it's not a matter of demand. The demand's there. So now they need suppliers. So I would say this is the time, this is, one of our board members from Eaton said, and he had been with Eaton for decades, that just recently retired. And he said, this is one of the first times he can remember where they're actually looking for suppliers instead of trying to downsize their suppliers. So companies are looking for suppliers, but that's one thing. But the other thing that's driving that, what's limiting the supply base, is talent. That is, we have to continue investing in that. And we're trying to do that as an organization. And you can always feel like that's somebody else's job. I'll just post on Indeed or, monster.com and I'll get somebody. If we don't invest in this talent pipeline, it's going to be everyone's issue.
Absolutely.
And so we would love to have people come along, companies, individuals come alongside of us, support the work of our foundation, because we are targeting, students in underserved and rural communities, that we want to introduce them to the opportunities in the industry. So that I think the talent programs and supplier development opportunities are going to be really essential in 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard through the grapevine, I know Tebbis is always very active when it comes to conferences and all that, that in the past years, there's a West Tech show in California as well as the AeroDef is happening at the same time. This year, or next year, 2025, AeroDef will actually be in Detroit. So it's not going to be in California, and it's one of the first times it actually is in Detroit. Is it because of the shift of some of the, or not shift, the interest in the aerospace market here in the Michigan area that this AeroDef has moved up here, or what do you see?
Yeah, and they've reached out to us as well to be part of that next year, and so we're having conversations along that line. That's a great question that I don't know the direct answer to. My opinion is they obviously recognize how big this industry is and the growth opportunities, and they realize the synergy between aerospace and automotive is so strong that's why states in the Midwest like Michigan and Ohio are essential for the future of this industry. So that's my honest belief is they see that synergy between aerospace and automotive that makes it such a prime place. It's where the solution is for the industry.
Yeah. I think you're right on. Right on. Yeah. Tony, I could talk to you for hours on the topic of aerospace, and it clearly shows that you have a passion towards that industry. What final thoughts from your side or advice can you give to some of our listeners that are just out there and are listening into this? What is there for you to give on to those companies that are listening?
Yeah, there's great channels that you can dial into to get information. Aviation Week is a tremendous organization. They were at the conference this year. They are a wealth of data and knowledge and information. I would urge you to subscribe to Aviation Week. A lot of our, Richard Abalafia, who you saw at the conference, Kevin Michaels, Mike Stengel, all that, those teams are regular writers and speakers, with Aviation. Aviation Week is probably 1 million subscribers around the world. So it's not some local, publication. They're worldwide, truly experts. I would urge you to, sign up for that, get their emails, sign up for their version of their publication, listen in on this. And then, like I said, go to some events. Even if you don't come to any of our events, you mentioned, MRO Americas. That's an Aviation Week, conference, and it's a great show. Very economical to attend. But go to those. You can run all over the map, go into conferences, which we take a lot of pride in making sure that the conference you come to with us annually, we change it up, we keep it relevant and fresh. But I would urge you to just dial into some information. Feel free to reach out to us. Our website, AIAMnow.com, and look at our event calendar, come to an event. If you need to plug into the community, you can try to do it one-off by yourself, call a company, make a cold call. And sometimes that works, but that's a really long road. You need to plug into a community of information and like-minded individuals.
Oh, and dial into your friends. I mean, all the people that we've met at the AIAM and the conference, they're warm. They want to work with you. They listen to your stories. And it's been a phenomenal community. And it's great to be part of it and seeing the aerospace industry grow.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
So, Tony, I thank you for being on this podcast. And I guarantee you we'll have you on again soon. So you can't run away. I can guarantee you this.
Love talking about it, and thanks for the opportunity to be with you.
Awesome. Well, my friends, you heard it here. The aerospace industry here in Michigan and around the world is growing. And you can be part of this movement, and you can be part of this. You have to look at your business, and it is a future-oriented industry, and it's not going away. And suppliers are needed, manufacturers are needed, talent is needed, youngsters are needed, and the aerospace industry can provide this. Get in touch with Tony at AIAM, connect with them, connect with the friends that are within the community there, and see what can this do. I mean, you have a responsibility to your employees to make sure that they have work, that they can put bread on their table, and maybe the aerospace industry can give you that alternative of looking elsewhere. If you want to get in touch with us over here at Tebis, and we encourage this as well, because obviously we're also a very big player when it comes to the aerospace industry and that side too. Reach out to us. We can definitely help you in the right direction there as well. If there are some ideas or topics or some thoughts, get with us as well as on the via email, marketing@tebisusa.com. Well, with that said, I wish you guys all the best. Hopefully this episode was interesting to all of you. And there's some very interesting things happening on the Tebis side with the aerospace. So listen up to some of the buzz that you hear, and we'll be in touch with you shortly. Well, my friends, until next time, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining this episode of All Access. Please leave a comment or review with your feedback or what you'd like to hear in future episodes. To learn more about manufacturing technology solutions and Tebis's capabilities, visit our website at Tebis. That's TEBIS.com.